You live by the tight core, you die by the tight core. I did not have any Joe Mixon on Sunday because I'm a moron and had a very small player core, and as a result, I got to close my tracking tabs by about 3 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. We're going to break down Joe Mixon's performance, break down how to view him going forward, how I should have viewed him entering Sunday's game, also talk some Justin Fields, rule changes, injuries, and much more to break down what went down in week number 9 in the NFL. This is the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gadula. He is the senior managing editor of numberFire.com. Brandon, did you survive Mixon Week 2022?
Nah.
No,
and what's... Look, like I'm sure everyone who builds any lineups was almost there on certain guys who like went off. But I was talking to you right before lock and said, like, I think Kenneth Walker is a good pivot play. Mm-hmm. I didn't really fully mention it, and I think we talked either Monday or Thursday about Mixon, and we said
we talked about it on Monday. Yeah, the
role's good, the underlying data is horrible, and so you need to do something with that work. He looked good.
Yeah,
on Sunday. So a big reversal in like the underlying stats, the expected stats, the success rate. So kind of came out of nowhere in terms of what he did with the workload. But again, Mixon was one of those guys I was like, look, it's no surprise that by the end of the week, by Sunday, if you listen to like any podcasts or like read any content, we generally know who the top plays are. And that's generally what we try to discuss Thursday, but then we throw in like the wrinkles of game stacks and how we're trying to differentiate. By Sunday, Mixon and Walker were two of the guys I was like, I think this is a way to be different without being dumb. I still was too dumb and didn't get there. So I guess I can take away that it wasn't like it completely hit me in the face out of nowhere. Yeah. I just didn't quite take the risk of rolling the dice on someone who just wasn't doing much with the workload that he had.
And I do think he was a good example of like banking on what's predictable. What's predictable is volume. What is not predictable is performance. And his performance had been bad, but the usage was there. The performance was there and the usage stayed good and he did what he did. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a good reminder to, I don't want to change the tight core aspect of it. The tight core I think is the right move, but I think it's a good reminder of focus on what's predictable. Focus on what you can predict. You can predict usage. And you can predict performance to an extent, but don't take what we've seen so far to be gospel. Make sure you are accounting for that. Make sure you're accounting for the fact that Joe Mixon is a good football player and can play well at times. And he did that on Sunday. We'll talk about Mixon. We'll talk about Justin Fields playing good football, putting together some good building blocks for upside, you could say, after a 42-point outing. We'll talk about all that and more throughout the podcast for today. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, wherever you get your podcast. Tom Vecchio is back, bringing you the Daily ISO every weekday, breaking down NBA DFS. We have our PGA DFS podcast for the Houston Open coming up tomorrow to break down that field. I remembered the tournament name because he told me it 5 minutes ago, but I remembered for 5 minutes. Whoopee for me. We got a lot of other stuff here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, so make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, and if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is free bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Play your way to bet on more than just the final score. Wager on everything from touchdowns to total yards to catches, same game parlays, all in an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So sign up today for your no-sweat first bet. Make every moment more this season with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. First online real money wager only. Refund issued is non-withdrawable free bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777. or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Wyoming and Kansas, 1-800-522-4700 plus ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas. Louisiana is 1-877-770-STOP. In New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Tennessee, call the red line at 1-800 it scrolled too quick. 1-800-889-9789. That's like a party trick to like recite those phone lines off by memory, and I still forgot it.
Yeah, I'm surprised you even write it down. I figured you had all those memorized.
Like
when I have to do it as a solo pod, boy, sometimes I have to do multiple takes because I can't read numbers in a row. So
I was at a wedding and someone asked me like, "Oh, let's hear your radio voice," and I was like, "I hate this." But I was like, I'm just gonna read off these like gambling help numbers. It's like my default to like jump into my radio voice, and then
if someone walked up to me and said like, "Let me hear your podcast,"
well, I tried to jump out the window, but it was shut. I tried. Believe me.
Nah.
I wanted to pull an Omar. I'll take the broken leg. We'll deal with it. But like, I couldn't quite get there. We gave it a shot.
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah. Let's dive in here to week number 9. Break down what went down. We have to start here with Joe Mixon going bananas on Sunday. 5 touchdowns, 3 on the season entering that game. 5 on Sunday. Pretty good. Now that's one thing. But the yardage was sick too. 211 yards in scrimmage. He got there, 22 carries and 5 targets, 9 red zone chances on 17 total team plays. We've been talking about the usage for a long time, and he finally had the production though. So how much does seeing those two together, knowing that this is within his range of outcomes, alter your view of Mixon going forward? Do you think we can do this consistently, or is it more of a bump up his ceiling but keep the median expectation the same?
I think it's probably a little bit more keep the expectations in check. Obviously, a 5 touchdown game is, I guess a reminder that touchdowns aren't just distributed evenly. You can get a good idea based on like a per game projection, or if you look back and be like, this guy scored this many touchdowns per game, it's not going to be, like alternating weeks. It's going to be stuff like this for a lot of guys. But yeah, the thing for me with Mixon that I already like alluded to was that he wasn't efficient with his opportunities leading into this week. This week, he averaged 3.36 rushing yards over expectation per carry. He had a 73% rushing success rate, catch rate over expectation of a plus 12%. He did basically everything. Like all of the negatives just regressed and flipped to the point that he overperformed in one of the biggest games of the year. So it's difficult to sit here and say that I need to be higher on Joe Mixon because the role didn't really change substantially. It was that he converted on those opportunities, and we have an 8-game sample, or I don't know if the biggest Bengals had a bye. Either way,
they have a bye this week.
Okay, that's right. Yeah. So then an 8-game sample of Mixon effectively underperforming pretty substantially, and then 1 game with him, being above expectation. Leading in, he was at a minus 0.42 rushing yards over expectation per carry. His success rate was 36%, so he doubled that. That's not really how success rates work, but like that's how big a difference it was in week 9 compared to leading in. So I should have been higher on Mixon. I don't think I should be kicking myself for saying I should have played 100% Joe Mixon.
No.
So I guess higher, but probably still not as high as consensus after a 5 touchdown game.
Yeah, I think that it's just kind of like you bump up his ceiling, but keep in mind that like he could revert back to it. Now, I will say, I think we should up the median expectation of the offense with no Jamar Chase, because I was pretty down on them entering the week, in part because of the lack of Jamar Chase. I did bet them -7, so I wasn't like that down, but that was more so an anti PJ Walker kind of thing than it was a pro Bengals kind of thing. I think that seeing them do this was encouraging, because they've had 4 games where they've underperformed on early down passing efficiency this year relative to expectations based on their opponent. And 3 of those were games where they either didn't have Jamar Chase or T. Higgins left early. So I thought, okay, their baseline comes down quite a bit when one of those guys is out. And I think that the baseline can come down, but the ceiling is still pretty good there. So they don't totally crater when one of those guys is out. Maybe they will against a better defense. I don't know. But
Well,
I think that for me, it was more so reminding myself that although I can lower expectations, I shouldn't cross them off when they're not fully healthy.
Yes, I mean, we talk all the time about like how you take a great player off the field, it hurts the offense. But this team has T. Higgins, Joe Mixon. I don't know how people feel about Tyler Boyd, but Tyler Boyd is definitely someone that I would like to have on my favorite team. I think he's,
as a football player,
yeah.
Sure.
So, you give that with Joe Burrow, like that's still a good core. It's not as good by any means without Jamar Chase, but it's different. So that's different than other teams where we bump them down too much or a lot. So yeah, I mean, they're interesting. I would kind of be fascinated to see them on the main slate next week after this, just because 5 touchdown game back on the main slate, that kind of thing. But the bye is going to kill the heat for Joe Mixon a little bit.
Let's talk about the passing offense too while we're here. Joe Burrow, 0.35 passing net expected points per dropback. League average is about 0.08 this year. You can check me if I'm wrong. Is it around there?
It was 0.07 as of last week.
I'm guessing that Burrow upped it himself. So we'll put it 0.08 for this week. We'll say that. Anyway, he's very efficient overall as a passer. Only one of his throws is deep, but clearly that approach worked. T. Higgins, 8 targets. Tyler Boyd had 6. Hayden Hurst had 5. T and Mixon both have a 22% target share in 2 games without Jamar Chase. Doesn't seem like Chase will be ready post-bye. He might be because they didn't put him on IR, but I don't think he'll be back by then. So let's talk about the overall view of this offense now, given we've seen one more game without Jamar Chase. Where are you at in them, assuming there's, again, no Chase in week number 11 when they're back?
Honestly, I'm not changing anything because I was fairly high on T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd to begin with. The problem with that was I didn't quite get there. I wasn't that sold on them, mostly because I want to play offenses where I like the other side of the game.
Yeah,
and there wasn't a whole lot of confidence in bringing it back for me. So
why was that? You didn't like the Panthers' offense?
No,
hater.
Not really.
Didn't account for the fact that Baker would come in and chuck it when the team was playing like prevent defense for an entire half the game.
Yeah. So like, I think that too with the Mixon, like, I think this could be, a nice pivot away from the other running backs. It's a misnomer to want running backs in blowout games. It's not a misnomer if
you want the tight script because you want them getting targets for all 4 quarters, stuff like that.
Yeah, and if the blowout results from that running back scoring all of the touchdowns, it's different. But if that was a bit more spread out, then Mixon wouldn't have erupted like he did.
Yeah, so we'll see the Bengals once again in week 11. But I think, bumping up the baseline a bit, maybe bump the ceiling a bit, but keeping things still in check because performances like the one against Cleveland still within the range of outcomes as well. So a high variance team, which is not always a bad thing, but it is an important thing to account for sure. Let's dig into some injuries here from week number 9. I just want to note that Josh Allen appeared to hurt his right arm late against the Jets. He did say in the game, it might be nothing, but I think this is one just kind of like log in your brain in case we see like some weird performances, weird injury reports, just kind of logging it for your brain. No discussion necessary, but just kind of noting that Josh Allen kind of shaking his hand around later in that game. So if you see performance dips, maybe think about it. But for right now, we'll keep status quo. Packers, a lot of injuries Sunday. Big one, obviously, Aaron Jones. Got x-rays, which were inconclusive, which doesn't sound good. Romeo Doubs left like right away. That one didn't look good either, did not come back. Christian Watson got hurt again. Doubs played just 1 snap. Watson played 17. Jones played 30 before exiting. The primary receiver here was Allen Lazard. He had 10 targets there for a 25% share. Lazard, the only Packer with better than 80% route rate, 8 out with 16 yards because they have no deep threats on this team. Don't look like that. Don't do that. That was before Doubs got hurt. Calm down. Sammy Watkins and Josiah DeGuara had 5 targets. Robert Tonyan, A.J. Dillon, Samurai Torre had 4 each. Dillon had a 64% snap rate, which is good against the Lions. Wow. 11 carries. Oh, he got some targets too. Oh, he had 34 yards. Oh, Jones, as I mentioned, x-rays inconclusive. Doubs in a boot. They're running out of boots on this team. He also had crutches, so Doubs seems like his is pretty bad. It's probably safe to say we can consider Lazard, despite this offense being hideous, but I guess actually I can ask, would you want Lazard anyway? Because this offense is just pretty trash. And how do you view AJ Dillon if Aaron Jones were to be out? They get Dallas at home next week as 5-point dogs. Deservedly so, I should know.
Yeah.
For the record.
What my question is, and you can't do the what about or like the well, take away this play or give him that play. If there weren't, what was it, 3 goal line picks for Rodgers? Was it 3 or was it just the 2? I don't know, but
he had 2 right away. I didn't pay attention to that game after that because it was so boring.
But you give them touchdowns there. I think the entire conversation is different. I have this in philosophy changes, and I'll talk about it a little bit more, but they were not as run heavy as they were against Buffalo. That was clearly a opponent specific game plan there. So I think we can feel decent about Lazard. You did mention him as someone you liked in terms of a pivot. My bigger question is, like, what do we do with AJ Dillon if there's no Aaron Jones? Because I like AJ Dillon, but he hasn't shown a whole lot. You would just imagine that the workload, and to have 11 carries and 34 rushing yards against Detroit. I mean, look, yards per carry and a per game sample is incredibly hard to predict, but you don't want to do that against Detroit. So I'd have a hard time because, like, I'd say Lazard, give me a salary for Lazard.
Against Dallas, they are 5-point favorites or dogs at home. Dallas's defense is legit good.
He was 65 this week?
Yeah, he's 65 this week. I would say probably 65 again, maybe 64, just because the offense stinks.
Yeah, so if he's in that range, like, I don't think that we can nitpick it.
Sure.
He's 67.
It's a little high.
A little high, probably in play for game stacks though. At that rate, still.
He'd be the first guy I'd turn to for game stacks. But that's because no one else is good.
Right. Like, what do we do with AJ Dillon?
So it depends on his salary. I think it's noteworthy that Kylan Hill is back because Hill has some juice and would probably take away a bit from Dillon. So I don't think we'd see like a 90% snap rate from Dillon.
I will say, sorry, I shouldn't have cut you off because I don't.
Go ahead.
AJ Dillon, 58% first half snap rate this week. That was the highest since week 3. So the overall snap rate.
But it's not the snap rate. It's like he's not doing anything with it.
I know, but the fact that he was on the field for a majority of the first half snaps might be something. And at a certain point, like, if the salary's low and he's going to play heavy snaps, like, I don't think AJ Dillon's horrific. He's having a bad season.
That's a good distinction. It's kind of because it does harken back to the Mixon discussion where just because we haven't seen it yet doesn't mean it's not in there like productions. That's fair.
So he's got a 44% rushing success rate.
But it's not success rate with him. I want explosion. I have not seen any of that.
Yeah, he's rushing to expectation. But, like, we can see him get, like, run routes.
He can get targets. Yeah.
So give me a salary next week. Let's assume Aaron Jones is out.
Assuming Aaron Jones is out, I would say 74 because I hate the offense.
I was going to say 73 for the same reason. I feel like 73 is like the perfect number.
I thought I was going to be too low on him, so I'm comforted to hear you say 73. 7,000.
Yeah.
Fair.
Not a write
I think
down.
that at least is low enough where it does account for some of the issues, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Just like it's such a bad offense. And like they're not that bad. Like they're not a bad offense. They're just a frustrating because like what you said, but like if you look at them again relative to expectations and early downs, they had overperformed expectations every week except for week 1 until this week where they were a half point worse than expectation on early down passing this week.
I wonder if were those picks on early downs? Because I'm sure that'd kill things.
The Bakhtiari one was on 4th down, I know. So like, and that's success rate based, not EPA based. So that wouldn't even affect it that much either. Yeah. So like that's bad. Really bad.
But Dillon, Lazard, I think both in play for next week in a game that it's a 10-game main slate again. So take a game off the main slate from what's normal. I haven't looked at the whole slate. We just let that unfold as we go. But
Yeah.
that's probably gonna be one of the better games of the week.
Nope.
And no, it's not.
Total's like 42. 42 and a half.
Yeah, but I love the Cowboys always. So
the Packers implied total is 18.8, 18.75. Justifiably.
Do you think we'll get Zeke? Because we're not going to talk about
Name that salary for Pollard quick, just out of curiosity.
Without Zeke?
Nah, it's the same Zeke plays. We talked about this last week.
If Zeke plays, I would probably have to cap it around like 67.
I'll say 68. He is 7,000.
Okay,
fair enough. You know what? Kudos to you, FanDuel. Thank you for making things at least interesting. Where I don't have to like cross off AJ Dillon because he's 9,000 or something like that.
And CeeDee Lamb 76. So
I don't care about CeeDee. You can. Done. Evan Ingram left in the fourth quarter. The back injury against the Raiders. Chris Manhertz, who we didn't talk. I talked on the show. We didn't. Played a 53% snap rate at tight end, but he ran just 6 routes. He's a blocker. If Evan Ingram were to miss time, we're probably not going to Dan Arnold, who I think ran 9 routes. Old name. I don't want to go there. You can do that. But could open up some for Zay Jones and Christian Kirk, who we do like, or I should say I like. Zay Jones, 29 routes and 5 targets. Christian Kirk, 9 targets, 76 yards, and a tud. Marvin Jones had 6 targets too. How would you value Kirk and Zay Jones if Ingram were to miss time? I should note they get the Chiefs next week as 9.5-point dogs. That spread is tightened from, I think, 12.5 on the look ahead.
Yeah, so Ingram wasn't as involved as he had been in recent weeks, but since week 5, between week 5 and week 8, he had 3 games with at least a 20% in-game target share. Wasn't getting targeted much in week 9 before he left, but that's pretty substantial to give up without really impacting the way that the offense should operate. Because I like Evan Ingram, but I'm not like even close to joking about the fact that he's like a game changer, or like someone who. So it's basically just more targets to fewer guys that we'd actually want to consider, and that's very helpful.
Yeah.
I know Kirk was 63, Zay was 55 this week, just for a baseline. I think next week in that spot, I'd say Kirk like 67.
So he was 63, but I think that was too low.
Yeah.
So I would say he should be 7,000 based on his workload.
His workload's been very, very consistent. Yeah.
Well, I'd say 7,000.
That's tough as a huge underdog. I don't love that.
Yeah, but it's like it's an efficient passing. I think they're efficient. Sorry. This is a pro Trevor Lawrence podcast. Sorry. One half of this podcast is a pro Trevor Lawrence podcast. You can do whatever you want. I'm not going to police you. But as a pro Trevor Lawrence person, I think it's an efficient passing offense against a bad defense where I think they'll be able to remain respectable and not just be full on chase mode the entire game.
So I said 67. You said 7,000. He's 68. He didn't have that big of a game.
Did you check Zay's salary yet, by the way?
I have not.
I did, because I wanted to see what his production was yesterday. He's 55 again.
Okay.
Would you rather have Kirk at 68 or Zay at 55?
Without knowing the slate, Kirk, but I might need to be okay with Zay Jones for some savings. If we're gonna have Mahomes on the slate, at least
Kelsey.
Looks like Buffalo, Minnesota. Diggs game.
Oh, that's a big revenge game. He hates them.
I
guess there's no Mike Zimmer anymore. Maybe the hatred's reduced.
So New Orleans, Pittsburgh, Houston, the Giants, Lions, Bears. We'll have some quarterbacks, but we're gonna.
The Athletic Football Show has they call it a Wick scale for like revenge games. Like how many John Wicks is this out of 5 John Wicks? So like, hey, I'm thinking I'm back kind of thing. Stephon Diggs is a 5 out of 5 Wicks for Bills versus Vikings. That's a little bit too high level for us. We try to keep it more to like the hey, Zay Jones against the Raiders, herp derp kind of revenge game. They actually go for real ones. But Stephon Diggs against the Vikings is an actual one. We try to keep it herp derpy around here.
To be honest, I don't really remember to like look for revenge games. That one just jumped out to me.
Don't worry. I'll look for them for you.
I know.
All right, let's dig into role changes from this past week, and let's talk about Justin Fields, because his role changed a bit ago, but like we kind of have to talk about it because it keeps on getting better. And we need to talk about this somewhere. He continued to cement himself as being a rushing quarterback in a big way because he set the record for most rushing yards for a quarterback in a regular season game with 178. He also 3 passing touchdowns. It was on 28 attempts, 123 yards, but he also set up those touchdowns by running. So it's not like it was like totally fluky that he had 3 touchdowns, 123 yards. He kind of set them up by himself as well. Fields now has 60 plus rushing yards in 4 straight games. He has 40 plus in 7 straight games. 40 is a key number because that's a passing touchdown, extra passing touchdown. If you get 40 rushing yards, his passing was still below average here relative, like, like from an efficiency perspective, but part of that could have been win related too. He added in Chase Claypool here. Claypool, 36% snap rates. He ran a route on 15 out of 30 dropbacks. He earned 6 targets on those 15 routes. Cole Kmet had 6 with 2 touchdowns because why not? Darnell Mooney had 8 targets. So Fields is running a ton. His passing is passable. It could get even better with Claypool now in the fold. We always want rushing quarterbacks in DFS, and Fields is doing that now, but without a ton of passing production still. So how are you viewing him? And can you stack him with Mooney now that we have another viable pass catcher in the fold here?
So I did feature Fields in my start set column on numberFire in case anyone wants to check that out. So something I've been tracking a good bit with his rushing production. I will say I'm a little bit nervous still about the passing because he's not going to set the rushing record every week. He's run
about
for
that.
I would, yeah. You bet me.
I'm not betting you after you beat me with your Khalif Raymond versus Alec Pierce bet. 3.2 FanDuel points, 2.8. A new low for the podcast. Again, we keep it herpy-derpy around here.
Yeah. But he's got rushing touchdowns in 3 straight. Eventually that won't stick. He is maxed out at 208 passing yards, his only game with over 200. I think he's at a max of 28 attempts, which came this week in terms of passing. Again, you love the rushing always, and especially with a guy who can be involved in the red zone and be a threat for rushing touchdowns. But I kind of need a little bit more than that. Maybe I'm being hard on him.
Are you talking about him from a stacking perspective or from a using him as a quarterback perspective in DFS?
Like I'll use him as a standalone for sure. Okay. I'm just saying
you're skewing towards having him by himself versus stacking him with someone, correct?
Yeah, I need to see more than like.
I don't disagree. I think that's probably fair, but I'm also totally okay with using him by himself. I think that's fine.
I just I need more 2s at the front of those yardages to bank on like stacks.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't disagree. I think because like with Mooney, like best case scenario is like 100 yards and a touchdown, right? And like I'd rather have a higher end best case scenario, especially if Claypool's going to earn 6 targets on 15 routes. They get Detroit next week though.
That's the issue.
2.5 point favorites. Total is 48, which is, it seems really high, but also I get it. So name me a salary for Justin Fields against the Detroit Lions in week number 10.
So he did, I did see it, but I already had a number locked in.
Okay. Do you want me to guess then?
Sure.
Okay. I would say 83.
I said 82. He is 83.
Okay, cool. I think that's fully appropriate. And we want rushing quarterbacks in DFS. He is that. We kind of want more passing on top, but against that defense, I don't think it's terrible. So
what about Mooney?
59. He was 61 this past week, but I didn't have a huge desire to get. I thought he was fine, but
I'd probably say 60, 62, 63 in that matchup.
He's 62. Claypool is 58. Not awful.
No. Did you see his did you see his drop when they cut to him? I don't know if I think it was like the ESPN pregame. They cut to like a look at Chase Claypool warming up and he like just dropped one, hit him right in the stomach basically, or like right off the hands. But
yeah,
so I can't watch highlights, but
highlight bias. He was signing Mitchell Trubisky jerseys before the game because he was wearing 10. And I thought that was pretty funny.
He had just the 13 yards, but a catch rate under expectation or over expectation of -40%. So could have been a lot better there.
The story of Chase Claypool's
Yeah.
career. Cordero Patterson returned. He split work, though, with Tyler Algier and Caleb Huntley. Patterson and Algier both had a 39% snap rate. Patterson, 13 carries and a target. Algier had 123 yards in scrimmage, had a nice screen reception. They turned into some big yardage. He had 10 carries and 1 target. Patterson, 4 red zone chances to 1 for Algier. Caleb Huntley had 3. So Patterson scored twice, but was still very much in a timeshare. That could improve as he gets further removed from his injury, but how are you viewing Patterson specifically in the short term?
I never really like him because the snap rate is not there. I know he gets high leverage work, but I'm always too low on Cordero because he is just dependent on being hyper efficient. And I can't really think about Cordero Patterson in this like split backfield without comparing it to, potentially to AJ Dillon without Aaron Jones. And Patterson's usually like 75-ish, which is why I never get there because the snap rate and like he gets work when he's out there. I understand that it's not a true snap rate as it is for most running backs, but I think I'd have a hard time playing Patterson in this split over AJ Dillon, assuming Aaron Jones is out.
I think the good thing is they play Thursday, so we'll get another week to like kind of read the situation before we have to deal with him on the main slate again. I don't expect him to pull away yet because it is short turnaround coming off an injury. So if you're playing the Thursday night slate, I might skew towards Algier, honestly, just because like I assume his salary would be lower and stuff like that. And his workload was pretty good, did play pretty well in that game. So remaining skeptical with Patterson more so than I was last year. Because you were off him for most of the time, and I was more so on him, but I'm also kind of off him until he separates a bit more right now. TJ Hawkinson, nice little debut at the Vikings, 91% snap rate, finished second on the team with 9 targets. Justin Jefferson at 13. Hawkinson caught all 9 passes for 70 yards. He and Jefferson each had 3 red zone targets out of 9 total. So how are you viewing TJ Hawkinson based on that initial role with the Vikings?
Love that. I don't know how you could
surprising.
I mean, we talked about like, he'll get some red zone work, and he did. But I don't know if anyone heard like the loudest motorcycle of all time just drive past it.
Definitely did not hear the loudest motorcycle of all time.
It derailed me. I couldn't even think, but yeah, we were talking about how, at least I did, how I figured he'd be a bit limited, but coming in like high leverage situations. A 91% snap rate, 82% route rate. That's awesome. You're not going to catch every single one of your targets each week, but to be involved in the red zone with, again, 33% of those targets, 3 of his targets were downfield, which for me is at least 10 yards. 8 out and just 5.1, but if part of that is because you're getting red zone targets, like that's also fine. So I don't really know how you look at this as a negative.
I think it's way better than I thought it'd be.
I'm like, I guess the catch rate situation is like the only thing that I could point to. It's not gonna be that good. But
he also kind of helped the offense.
Yeah, we wanted to see.
They didn't play great in that game, but like they were actually vertical, which they have not been. So Kirk Cousins in that game had 9 throws, 16 plus yards downfield. He had not had that number the entire year. His previous high this year was 6. So a pretty big deviation. I've not checked his 8 out overall, but like they actually decided to go downfield a bit more, and they're facing the Bills next week, so they're going to have to go downfield. His 8 out was 10.1, so
10.1 up
actually
from 6.3 entering.
That's pretty good. Yeah. If they have a third viable pass catcher, that's kind of intriguing. So name me a salary for Hawkinson on the road, 7.5-point dogs against Buffalo next week.
He'll probably be like 66.
But what do you think is fair for him?
65.
Against the Bills, I'd probably knock down to like 62. But he's 6,000.
Okay.
That's not bad.
No.
They're going to probably throw a lot. Unless the Bills play like they did again this past week. Like,
I guess if he would have scored, he'd have been like 65 though.
Yeah. So 9 targets. Offense would have been vertical. Got some high leverage looks. That's pretty good.
It's close to a write down because we're going to potentially need to match Kelsey's upside.
Yes.
And Hawkinson has that ability if he's going to play.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the snaps and routes aren't going to scale back by any means.
No.
So they're
not for Johnny Munt.
What about Justin Jefferson? Salary.
It's so hard unless we have like value at running back. Like,
right.
Like he's worth like 93, but like, am I going to get there is a different question.
So he's 86.
Oh, wow. That's actually really interesting. Because I wound up with a lot of DeAndre Hopkins this week, and he was, I think, 86. Didn't go great, but like I was there. That was in part because we had some value at running back, but the 86 is pretty low for a guy who has like punch you in the face for not using him upside.
And final thing I got to ask here is, can we use Kirk Cousins?
No. No.
Okay.
No. Okay. No. All
right.
Not if we have Justin Fields on the slate. I'm not doing that. Sticking with the Vikings for a second, though, we could potentially use their running back. Dalvin Cook, 85% snap rate for the second time in 3 games. Also had 6 targets for the second straight game. He hasn't blown up this year, but he has the building blocks for a Mixon in him. Maybe not next week against the Bills necessarily, but name that salary on Dalv with another good usage game in his back pocket.
Are you asking me to not to name a salary for next week against the Bills, but
no, name it for next week.
Okay. So he had a nice end zone target. You love to see that. So I have a few good end zone targets this week.
Also, we should mention that he caught that end zone, not just a target. He caught it too. Yeah.
But
yeah. Who cares if you catch it? If you get it, production doesn't matter. You look so mad. Can I make you quit by 10:36 before 10:40 on a Monday?
Yeah, Jim. What we do is we just look at who had the most touchdowns, and then we just play them.
I'm in a points per end zone target league, so I actually do care. Just for the record.
That's why we look at catch rate and not downfield targets. Get out of here with that.
Just saying.
The fact that he had the end zone target, you love to see it.
I'm indifferent. Okay. Give me the touchdowns. Give me the real production.
Gosh.
Name a salary, dang it.
Well, he wasn't very efficient on the ground.
I don't care.
Production's what matters.
Target. He had an end zone target. Put him at 10-5.
All right. We got to just name this and move on. Probably like 85.
I was thinking 83. He's 75. Oh, my goodness. We got to use Dalvin a bad matchup. Right?
Well, I mean, we care about the production, right?
Yeah.
That's number 1 on this podcast. And he did have 12.6 FanDuel points, 47 yards, and 17 carries. So according to Jim, no. According to any sort of underlying data and the things that we look for to try to buy low, then yes.
I think that's a really good salary. Is that a write down for Dalv at 75?
I think so.
Yeah.
Especially in that game.
Yeah. 6 targets in back-to-back weeks. A lot of snaps. Kind of feeling themselves.
Yeah, I'm in a points per snap league, points per target league.
Got to take some stuff off of Kirk Cousins' shoulders because the ice is like weighing him down now. Because I think they add a chain with every victory, and he's like eventually just going to collapse under the weight. So I feel like they, Dalv at 75 is a write down for me. I think. In their first game with Kadarius Toney, the Chiefs used a rotation at receiver. Marquez Valdes-Scantling mercifully got his snap rate cut down to 71%. Thank you, Andy. Take him out of play for me. Just do it. Just end it now. Mecole Hardman, 55% snap rate. Justin Watson and Sky Moore played about a quarter of the snaps. Toney played 7 total snaps. I think it's noteworthy that Hardman ran 41 routes and 72 dropbacks. Also 72 dropbacks. What? Hardman 4 red zone targets in this game. We've talked, okay, this is like a heat check throwback, but he's kind of getting the Isaiah McKenzie treatment where he is getting a lot of usage inside the red zone because he's fast. And I think I think teams value that down there. So Travis Kelce is number 1. I think Juju Smith-Schuster pretty firmly 2 in terms of stacking, but is Hardman now number 3 for you in terms of stacking with Mahomes?
Yeah. I don't know who else it really could be.
I mean MVS, but I just want an excuse to like blast him to the sun.
No, I mean he got
one target.
One target on 50 rounds. Even I know that's a 2% target per route right there. Even I can do that
in time, but good for you.
Yeah, it's Hardman number 3. I think we got to be high on Juju, which we historically have not been. Yeah. But he looks like rejuvenated.
He did look a little lackadaisical on one play last night. I'm on Juju checked out watch because it worries me. I agree with you, but I just get uncomfy when I see him looking checked out. I get real uncomfy. I agree with you. You are heard.
Okay, so we have Kelsey number 1, Juju number 2. Hardman is like probably sort of barely in the consideration unless we love the game stack. Or are you saying he's like I would one off him because he might get a rushing target? Okay.
What you said.
So then I need salaries on all 3 of those guys.
Kelsey 79.
It's probably gonna be like 78, yeah.
I think it'll be 8,000.
Oh gosh, he's 85.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can't
I fear that they're, at least with he and Juju, that their numbers will be inflated because the raw output.
Yeah.
Or I guess no, the slate would have been posted, before.
Correct. True.
Yeah, never mind.
So Kelsey 8.5, I get it, but little high. Juju, I would say 68.
Yeah, I said 68 as well. In that like Chris Godwin sort of range, but he's 7,000.
Fair. Like it's a little high, but it's fair, I think.
Yeah.
And then Hardman, I would say, based on the role that he has, with some touchdown potential in there due to the way he's being used, I would say that's like a 58 kind of role, right?
I was thinking 59.
58 feels like the coward's way out, honestly, but yeah.
He's 6,000.
I'm guessing people will probably talk him up this week, and they'll probably talk about the red zone rule like we literally just did. And that might lead to his being popular. That would make me very uncomfortable if he were to have any sort of like roster rate tied to him.
Yeah. I think I'd be there too, where I'd just be a little bit nervous.
But he's above MVS. Like,
yeah, I'm not going to use MVS.
You could, so FanDuel, if you don't want to play FanDuel anymore, want to like make sure you don't, you can self-exclude. It's a very useful tool that you should utilize if you are in the situation. If it's not fun for you anymore, you should use self-exclude. I need to self-exclude from Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I need to find a way for them to not allow me to use him. $5,400 for him. I'm not using him. Do not say that name.
Twice.
Like, is there a Chrome tool I can use that will like redact his name so I just will never have to see him and remember he's on the team?
Yeah, it's called using your brain and looking at it just as production, and then that's all we care about.
I can't tell if you're trying to tell me to use him or not.
No, you said that production matters.
Yeah, it does.
And he didn't have the production, so let's just...
Are you saying you're going to use Marquez Valdes-Scantling because he didn't produce? Oh, he ran a lot of routes. He played a lot of snaps. He might have had an end zone target. We
work like hard to find some role changes and track all this stuff on Sundays. If production's what matters, we should just pull up the FanDuel points leaders. Go over
I didn't say production is what matters. I'm saying that if you're giving me the choice between an end zone target and an end zone touchdown, I'm going to take the end zone touchdown.
I just happen to say you
can be more specific. You're saying, oh,
there's a creative end zone target.
There's a parallelogram over there. I'm like, no, it's a square. Like, why can't you be more specific? Like, that's all I'm saying. It's not a parallelogram. It's a square. Like, it is a parallelogram, but it's also a square.
Yeah, creative.
We can be more specific.
He had a creative end zone touchdown. Yeah, that tracks.
There we go. Easy peasy. I'm appeased now. Everyone's happy. Everyone goes home happy.
Okay.
End zone touchdown.
That's Jim's new stat now.
Yeah, exactly.
Get out of here. Let's move on.
Yeah. James Conner returned to play a lot of snaps, but didn't have a ton of work. He had 7 carries for 45 yards, 5 targets on 25 routes for a 63% route rate. Conner saw 1 of 5 available red zone chances. So, Benjamin got good work when Conner was out. But Conner is back and actually had a better role than he had at times when he was healthy. So are you interested in James Conner in DFS after the way he was used on Sunday?
Well, I'm not going to bring up the bit again, but the snap rate was good. The production, not substantial, not getting a lot of work on a per snap basis, at least on the ground. I don't know if James Conner will continually have a 63% route rate and be involved in the passing game. I would love that if he could, because at times, shockingly, he can show some things in the open field, which was usually not the case. And then he started to show it a bit in Arizona, and it was a bit of a reality check. We were considering Eno Benjamin whenever Conner was out. I think Conner is somewhat in play. Arizona gets the Rams next week. I feel like we give a lot of people the Devin Singletary sort of designation.
Just hollow,
just on the field for 70% of the snaps, but doesn't really. He's not a.
I think Devin Singletary is actually probably pretty good. He's in the Singletary zone. Can we just call it that, in the Singletary zone?
Yeah,
because his max yardage this year is 77. And I can't see that really changing, because Mixon against Carolina, you could see that changing because pretty efficient offense, not the worst matchup. The Rams haven't been a good team, but their defense has still been fine. And I can't really see James Conner suddenly being efficient there.
Yeah, I said 66 in my head for Conner. If I'm putting him in the Singletary zone, it should be lower, and it is lower, but it's 63. That's going to be tough.
Yeah.
I think it's...
I don't want to go there is what I would say.
Yeah, at 63, that's Devin Singletary, just copy paste.
Yeah,
everything.
I think if it were a different matchup, I'd have more interest. But I just can't. It's hard to see him having, because even though people say FanDuel is a touchdown heavy site, it's true. It is touchdown heavier than some others, but you still need yardage to burn people for not using you, and it's so hard.
It's not standard scoring. It's not
it's just hard to see
yardage.
Can he burn me for not using him? That equation involves yardage always, and I'm not sure if he can burn me for not using him yet.
Yeah, I mean, even at his peak, when he had an absurd scoring rate, it wasn't we have to make sure we get a ton of James Conner. It was James Conner can put up 20, 25 because he scores 3 times, but it's not he was pushing every week we got to figure out ways to get access to James Conner. It was so I'll be a little bit tempted at 63, assuming that there's not a whole lot of running back value.
Sure.
But probably won't be building around him by any means.
I don't think I'll get beyond a little bit tempted, is what I would say. I don't want to go there. It's more a question if I'm forced to go there.
I think the optimizers will James Conner a good bit this week.
I'm not sure if this was because he banged up his knee, but Deion Jackson's role without JT dipped quite a bit this week. His snap rate was 63%. He played just 1 snap in the fourth quarter after he I thought he tore his ACL, honestly, but he came back in right away. Jordan Wilkins played 30% of the snaps. He was not there the last time we saw the team without JT. So if Taylor misses more time, how much does this game alter your view of Deion Jackson?
Well, Deion played 90% of the snaps in the first half. That was the highest mark for any running back this week. I think it was more the matter of Sam Ehlinger showed some stuff last week. Then, say whatever you want about Bill Belichick and the Patriots, currently versus what they used to be. Still, young quarterback playing the Patriots. Usually that goes horrifically. So there was no efficiency, no moving the ball for the Colts. I wouldn't be completely out on him if we didn't get JT, but I would still need the salary to be 62 at most or something like that, because there's a lot of downside.
You're facing the Raiders next week, and the Raiders suck. So does that influence anything for you or no?
It does. I mean, you have to wait. What's a 90% first half snap rate mean versus someone who got a bit, banged up. I guess we'll learn a lot about practice reports. All this might be moot if JT plays, but
Well, just out of curiosity, what's the salary on JT hypothetically?
Jonathan probably didn't move. It's 7,000.
Kind of hope he gets in a full practice by Friday, because if we get JT at 7,000, I know he's been bad, but against this defense,
And Dion at 55, would you go back there if JT?
If there were no JT, I would go back there, but I would lower his median expectation because there's a possibility that his role is just not as like. I also want to see what his practice reports are, because I think he'll be out. I don't think he's going to practice Wednesday, based on what happened. So I don't know. We'll keep an eye on that. Like, he came back in, like you mentioned this on Slack, but the first play he came back in, he missed a block and gave up a sack. So I don't know if he was fully healthy. I don't think he should have been back in there, honestly. I was happy he was because I had him on my teams, but maybe he'd sit out for a bit. Jamal Williams.
Speaking of sitting out,
I'm not reading what you wrote here. You wrote down the note for this one. You said he could be a viable play for DFS. No, I'm not using Jamal Williams. How dare you put these words?
If DeAndre Swift is effectively playing 15% of the snaps,
I don't care. I'm not using Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams played a 63% snap rate. Swift 16%, Justin Jackson 21% snap rate, 4 carries. Looks a little juicy on those as well. Williams 24 carries, no targets, 5 at 11 red zone chances. I'd rather get punched in the throat than use Jamal Williams. Is he a consideration for you?
If the salary's right.
What's the salary against the Bears?
If it's like 7,000.
It's an awful salary for a guy who doesn't catch passes on a bad offense. Or
offense. This is a bad offense now.
They scored 15 points against the Packers. They're definitely great. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
He's 74.
Awful.
68. This makes my heart sad. I love DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, I do too. I have a dynasty league with him and Brees. And
nobody cares.
I agree. They shouldn't, but I'm sad. I would rather have a free square on my lineup than use Jamal Williams at 74.
I'm on Ross St. Brown 6,900.
Sick. Love it.
Brother game too next week.
I'm just gonna keep on using him until I turn into a corn cob.
Is it revenge if you play your brother?
Good question. How did he do against the Packers when Equanimous was on the Packers? We'll have to look into those splits. This is the key data you're looking for. He had 9 targets again. I have a note on that later on, but he did have decent usage. I feel like I'll be there again personally, but 74 for Jamal is too high. I know we want touchdowns, but I don't want just touchdowns.
If he, like I said, if he were 7,000 or something, I'd be more open to it.
I'd need to be like 66 or so. Personally,
it's like a Damian Harris sort of situation. Not this
year,
but
exactly.
in the past.
Yeah, fully agree. Miles Sanders' role was decent in week 9, better than it's been most of the year. He played a 66% snap rate. He had 17 out of 22 running back carries, including a goal line touchdown. He had 6 out of 10 red zone carries as well. Boston Scott had none for Gretchen Wieners. Do you see this as a reason to change your view of Sanders, or was it more so just variance against a bad Texans team?
I'd bump him up a smidge, but we never talk about Miles Sanders. We never play Miles Sanders. Thankfully, they're not on the main slate. They play Monday night, so I don't really have to worry about it too much. I'll enjoy getting another week of data to see if Sanders turns into like a 65 to 70% snap rate guy. I don't expect that to stick, but I think it was one of the better Miles Sanders games that you could have realistically envisioned.
It's better than it has been. I don't think it's a huge change, but it doesn't hurt. I'll take it. But I just have a hard time getting to him when they still mix in the other guys a little bit more that I like, especially because the salary is always kind of high, like weirdly high. They are not on the main slate next week because they will never be on the main slate again.
I said that already, Jim.
I know. Just wrapping it up.
Okay.
Just wrapping up the point. I listen to you.
Yeah.
I always listen to you. Never have not listened to you. Speaking of the Texans, their
goodness.
target distribution without Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins was bad. Philip Dorsett and Chris Moore both had 5 targets for a 24% share. Woof. 8 of the Texans saw 1 or 2 targets, not enough for Brevin Jordan, my guy. I'm sad. Dorsett led with an 80% route rate. I didn't know that Philip Dorsett was still in the league until week 8. Something I was like, he got a touchdown. Good to know. Nico Collins didn't practice this past week. Cooks is back with the team, so maybe gets a squeaky wheel narrative bump, though it seems more so like a trade me kind of bump. Any interest in any Texan not named Dameon Pierce?
No.
Good. I agree. Jeff Wilson played more snaps in his Dolphins debut than Raheem Mostert. Seems bad. Wilson had played 27 snaps for 51%. Mostert played 45%. Both guys had 9 carries. Wilson had more targets, 3 versus Mostert's 2. Even though Mostert scored, Wilson led in red zone chances, 5 out of 11 compared to 2 opportunities for Mostert. So we've had Mostert pre-trade as being like a guy we were turning to around like 7,000, around like 65. I think we just shove him out of consideration now. And I think that I'm more likely to consider Wilson now than Mostert. What about you?
Yeah, more likely to consider Wilson than Mostert, which also hurts because I like Mostert, but I love Jeff Wilson too.
Yeah.
They're just sort of like fun DFS guys to track whenever the situation's good. The thing is, like, yeah, it's sort of a split that leaned toward Jeff Wilson, but it was Jeff Wilson's debut, and that's relevant.
So it could skew more towards him.
You don't bring in Jeff Wilson, give him a bit of a majority with the intent to.
Are you going to try to be ahead of this? Because they get Cleveland next week, and Cleveland's awful against the rush. Are you going to try to be ahead of a change for Wilson, or do you not think it's a good enough situation to try to be early?
It's going to depend fully on which running backs are on the slate. Like if we have multiple, guys who can really burn us for not using them, I can't justify Jeff Wilson, and Wilson's salary. So
name that salary.
I think he should probably be like 63.
He's 65.
See, he just got what Mostert was last week.
So looking at snaps by quarter, Wilson took over in the second half. I don't know if they just ran a lot of plays because I didn't pull up his like quarter by quarter snap rate. I just pulled up like his next gen stats, like play log. He played a lot in the third quarter and a lot in the fourth quarter. I think it might have been like he was playing well and they decided to give him more. I don't know if you have like his quarterly snap rates up, but
I just have first half.
What was it there?
So Jeff Wilson, 35% in the first half, Mostert 60%.
And he finished with 50. So I think they just kind of featured him more and more as it went along, he'll know the playbook better. Second game, I think that I could see myself using Jeff Wilson 65. Who is the guy we were talking about before? We're like, oh, would you rather use Connor at 63 or Wilson at 65?
Wilson, he's in a much better offense.
And he's in a better matchup. I think Wilson by a pretty decent margin on it, honestly. I would bet that I use Jeff Wilson next week. He can't be a core play, can't be a cash game play because I don't know what the role will be, but trying to get ahead of it in that matchup in this offense, I think is a worthwhile endeavor at 65 specifically.
Sure.
Sure as in you don't agree, or sure as in
that's the best I can do is say like
it's fair.
I'll have some interest, but not a ton.
The Bills still had a lot of Devin Singletary because they were in a neutral game script, JETS, Jets. Despite the addition of Nyheim Hines, Singletary 74% snap rate, James Cook 23%, Hines 7%, Singletary 8 out of 12 running back carries. He had 5 out of 10 running back targets.
James Conner had 7 and 5, and Singletary had 8 and 5. So, and 74% snap rate versus 72.
He's in the Singletary zone. Like Singletary's role got a little bit worse, but not a lot worse. So he might keep the same role, but doesn't matter.
No, I think there are just more paths to his role getting worse if they get Nyheim Hines more involved. I will say that his salary is only $5,600, and the idea of having zero interest in someone at a $5,600 salary with the 70+% snap rate on potentially the best offense in football is like usually the stuff I dream of is getting a $5,600 back with a 75% snap rate attached to like the best offense.
Yeah. It's a people may not understand this reference, but it's a Kelsey.gif kind of situation. I think that's what it is. You're not getting a whole lot out of it. Elijah Moore's snap rate did increase this week. Oh boy. But he got 0 targets. A lot of cardio for Elijah Moore. Garrett Wilson continued to dominate for the Jets. He had 9 out of 24 targets, turned into 92 yards, second straight game with 90 or more. So they're still run heavy. Corey Davis is not there too, and that's very noteworthy because Zach Wilson does like Corey Davis, but we typically reserve the ETN scale for situations to monitor, your level of interest in a guy, tracking them, okay, we're getting a little excited about this guy. How many ETNs out of 10 are you on Garrett Wilson right now?
I'd probably put it like a 6.5 because Agreed. we need value at receiver, and Wilson's been a guy that I've been like considering for a few weeks in a row, and he's doing it in, against defenses that aren't the most generous necessarily. So it's not just because it was New England last week and the Bills this week. Love that. Love the role that he's had. And again, we need receivers in the low 6,000 range. So hopefully he doesn't get too bumped up. We still have worries about touchdown expectations though. And I don't want to write that off completely because this team's not going to score too many times, but I'd probably say like 64.
I could probably get there. They're on a bye. I think around, like, if he were to stay around 58 like he was this week, I'd be pretty interested because they get the Patriots again after the bye, but then they finally face them like because their past 3 games against the teams, based on my numbers, ranked 1st, 4th, and 5th defensively. It's a really tough schedule. And they get again after the bye, but then they get a couple games easier, and then the schedule the second half of the year opens up. That could be pretty fun. So I'm at 6.5 ETNs as well on Garrett Wilson right now. Pretty excited, and hopefully keeping him as a value play would be good for us. PJ Walker got benched in the second half for Baker Mayfield on Sunday. Baker, 155 yards and 2 touchdowns when it didn't matter. Pure stinky garbage time. It was great. 20 attempts, 0.62 passing net expected points per dropback. He threw 5 times to DJ Moore and Terrace Marshall, 3 times to running backs, Deontay Foreman and Raheem Blackshear. 5.4 yards. 2 out of 10 passes were at least 16 yards downfield. Sam Darnold is also apparently healthy and ready to return, and they're expecting to play at some point the second half because sure, why not? What's your view of this offense if Walker is no longer the quarterback?
Still don't care. I want to DJ Moore and Terrace Marshall were 2 of my favorite receiver prospects that there have been in recent years. I can't get there. Deontay Foreman's first half snap rate plummeted from 76% last week to 47% this week.
They were down 35 at the half.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
You don't want to play guys who can get scripted out.
Yeah, especially not in the first half because their team stinks.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, DJ Moore was 7,000 this week. Are they on the main slate? No. They might be on bottom. No, they play the Falcons.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Thursday night. That's right.
Yeah.
So, doesn't really impact us too much. I think Terrace Marshall's kind of trending up, but not to the point that it's super noteworthy.
I agree. Okay, let's dive into situations to monitor from this past week. What else did you notice when looking at usages here this week?
You didn't have too much. We've been monitoring Kyle Pitts' usage, and it was good in week 9. Results they're not always going to be there, even if the targets are there. He and Drake London had 7 targets, but neither had even 30 yards. The volume and the efficiency are down. Pitts is always going to be oversalaried due to his potential and his perception and his roster rate. That stuff all matters. So, we liked him a decent amount this week in the right lineups, but the floor is bad. The ceiling is also capped.
Yeah.
As Isaiah Pacheco, 45% first half snap rate this week. It was under 30% in every game so far leading in.
He played 9 snaps in the first series, and I got so excited. 9 out of 13. And then they decided they couldn't run the football, and they're like, oh, okay, so we'll just go to Jarek every play.
Yeah, Jarek had like a 64% route rate or something.
He's in the Singletary zone.
Jarek or Pacheco?
Oh, no, Jarek doesn't, or Pacheco doesn't play snaps, so he can't be in the Singletary zone.
I was going to say.
But Jarek is, so we can't use him. I think if they were in a rush heavier script, they would probably use Pacheco quite a bit, or if they were in a situation where they thought they could run the ball, like in a bad, like if they're facing the Packers, I think Pacheco's snap rate would be like 6. It could push 60, maybe.
Maybe. But I still think they'd sling it, but it's like 3 ETNs.
3 is probably correct. Like we're still monitoring, and we're not using him yet, but we're still monitoring him. Yeah.
Even if you get rid of Clyde Edwards-Helaire,
which they kind of did,
but like completely take him out of the equation. I don't know. There's still
I think it's a matchup based thing because like they couldn't run on Tennessee last night. Tennessee's rush defense is very good. So when they face the Chargers, bump Pacheco's expected usage up. Maybe don't use him still. Like it might not be high enough to use him, but bump it up and bump McKinnon down.
So neither of them are playable at any salary against the Jags next week.
No.
Okay. I agree.
I'd had to think for a second, but no.
Antonio Gibson led the Washington backfield with a 56% snap rate over Brian Robinson at 46%, but actually Gibson had a 71% first half snap rate. The whole backfield's dusty, but especially Brian Robinson is out for me. Talked about Deontay Foreman losing his role. You don't love to see that, but it happened. And then Robbie Anderson got up and running a bit, 85% route rate, 3 targets for -4 yards.
Does it count as cardio if you're not like actually like running downfield? Like
got 2 downfield targets.
Like in this offense, can it be cardio if there are no downfield routes outside of DeAndre Hopkins?
I don't know. I don't know. We covered a lot of stuff otherwise, so I'm not
using Robbie ever.
Like, no. I just
okay, good. Making sure.
I think it does hurt. Like it might hurt Rondale a little bit. Their roles aren't the same, but if he's on the field more and more,
Rondale better. No, because you want Robbie out there because Robbie can't earn targets, so it's perfect.
Okay.
Play Robbie more, so that Rondale gets more targets. It's great.
Then you want MVS on the field then.
Yes, I do. Okay. Send MVS to Arizona, and I think that'd be great. Although that might be, I don't know. Yeah. Send MVS to Arizona. Let's do that. Probably not a huge thing, but Josh Jacobs' role got a bit worse on Sunday. His snap rate was 68%. Outside of the blowout last week, that was his first time below 80% since week 3. 17 routes and 38 dropbacks. Not a huge concern, but I do think it does lower expectations on Jacobs, at least a little bit uncomfy about it is what I would say.
78% first half snap rate. It's been living in like the 81 to 86% range the 4 games prior. So a little like a smidge down, but not as drastic as like 68 makes it sound. So,
well, but they were in a neutral script in the second half. They were up 17-0 in that game. So I think the full game snap rate is better than the first half snap rate in terms of representing. Also, the Raiders have blown 2 17-point leads, and I've had the opposing team's money line in both games. So I love the Raiders. I think they're great. Speaking of that game, Travis Etienne's red zone role continues to be absurd. He had 7 out of 11 chances on Sunday. He now has a 55% red zone share in the 3 games as the full lead back. Really nice boost to his value. He's also a stupid good player. So we talked about Kirk and Zay Jones next week. Name that salary for Etienne against the Chiefs.
82.
I like that. I think that's probably what I would have said as well before you said it. And
I was going to say that. I think 8,000. I was going to say 8,000 too.
I like it.
Yeah.
I have similar thoughts from Etienne to Kenneth Walker. He had 9 out of 4 red zone chances or 9 out of 14. Not he had a 200% red zone share.
What a legend.
He had 9 out of 14 red zone chances this week. He has a 50% red zone share in games without Rashad Penny. And he also set a new season high with 4 targets this past week. He's good. They're playing in Munich this week, so they're not in the main slate, but Kenneth Walker III Very good football player. Leonard Fournette lost a bit of ground to Rachaad White again this week. This time, though, it's noteworthy because they were playing in a neutral script. We thought that Lenny might be a guy who gets a lot of work in neutral scripts, but there was neutral this week and he lost work. 60% snap rate, 9 carries and 7 targets for 60 yards. He had 3 out of 11 red zone chances. I kind of just think I'm out on Lenny. I'm not sure how high the odds are that he burns me right now, so I think I might just be out.
Yeah, I don't really think there's like the Mixon game lurking.
Yeah.
The role's not the same.
Yeah, I agree. This might be irrelevant because of the offense, but Jelani Woods hurt his shoulder against the Patriots. Don't laugh. He didn't play the final quarter. He had been since from Mo Alley Cox. I'm not saying to seek out Colts pass catchers. I'm just noting it because I think Jelani Woods is good anyway. James Robinson had a receiving touchdown and earned more work this week, but this backfield is still one to avoid. Michael Carter, 52% snap rate, 86 yards. Robinson, 40% snap rate, still some red zone work. I am still out here until further notice. Your guy, Noah Fant, had a huge reception and got a bit of a roll increase. He ran a route on 22 of 36 dropbacks. I'm not sure if that was a direct response to Marquise Goodwin being out, but they did run more 2 tight end sets, and Fant ran 17 of his routes from either the slot or out wide. I am far more likely to consider him if Goodwin misses more time. So go ahead and gloat if you want.
No,
it required an injury to get there, but just saying, and a fluky long.
I was talking up Noah Fant so much this week. Didn't just mention him last week when tight end was terrible and we thought DK would miss.
No, we didn't think DK would miss because a certain reporter said that DK was going to sit, which locked in that he was going to play. So like we knew DK was going to play, and there was no point in considering Fant at that time.
I have nothing to say about Noah Fant.
Okay. Cam Akers is active, but who cares? The Rams backfield still irrelevant. Darrell Henderson, 49% snap rate. I need more than that in a bad offense. Hard pass on that team still. Let's go now to philosophical changes. You mentioned the Packers early on as being a team you're going to note here. What did you see from them and elsewhere this week?
Yeah, so Green Bay we knew was really, really run heavy against the Bills. That did not stick, that tendency in week 9. Packers went from a minus 15.4% pass rate over expectation to a plus 4.5% this week. In the first half in particular, it was plus 10.4%. They haven't been the most pass heavy team all season, but it was clear that they're not just going to run the ball. That was just, they're not going to be the Bears. We're not going to get 2 Bears teams in the same division. I think that's clear. Houston, not relevant, as we learned, aside from Pierce. But it's important to know, for me, I try to be sensitive to like when a team actively tries to ruin games, and Houston might be trying to do that. They had a pass rate over expectation of minus 17% as huge underdogs on Thursday night. The Eagles overcame it with some efficiency and scored 29 points, but had some lower play volume than normal. Again, just want to be sensitive to stuff like that when teams actively try to ruin games. And they should. They should try to have fewer plays and control the clock as much as they can, but that's tough. And then somewhat similarly, like a team that's not super DFS relevant, but the Patriots are playing faster recently. They're 5th in adjusted pace by my numbers over the past 3 games. However, if you're fast and bad, it doesn't lead to more plays. So they're still about average in terms of plays per game in that sample, but it
helps their opponents.
So like it helps.
It didn't help Sam Elgar this week, but like it does in theory help their opponents. So yeah.
And it's a 3-week sample where things have been a little bit different. So, maybe it's, I don't know why they're playing faster.
I don't know either.
But again, pace matters in terms of seconds per play, but it also matters in terms of like plays run. But hey, if you get the Patriots off the field faster, their offense, that can actually maybe help the other team.
Yeah. I think that works as well. Okay, let's go to our salary scroll now, opening up the Week 10 main slate over on FanDuel.com and going position by position, shouting out salaries that are noteworthy to us. Starting off at quarterback, what do you see there, Brandon?
Lots of studs and or rushing quarterbacks.
Or both.
Josh Allen, Mahomes, Justin Fields, Tua, and Kyler are the top 5.
I think the first one that stands out to me, no, probably shouldn't. Dak Prescott stood out to me, but then I realized that the Packers game is probably going to stink. So it's not about Dak, it's about his opponent.
I saw that too. Again, they're not as as bad as maybe week 8 made it sound. The Packers, that is, in terms
I
of.
think more so. I was talking about pace. Sorry, I should have clarified.
Gotcha.
They drag things down there.
Yeah, Dak had sort of like a classic Russell Wilson game before the bye with just 27 attempts, but 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, some rushing and a rushing touchdown. Like, I'd be tempted, but it's going to be hard to gloss over Josh Allen, Mahomes. Like, I'm not out on Justin Fields, but it's going to be hard to play Justin Fields over Mahomes, I think.
I don't know if that's against that team, though. It might be. It's more defensible. I think that I'd rather go Mahomes, but it is nice to have upside at quarterback again this week. Allen has it against Minnesota. Mahomes has it. Fields has it. Tua against Cleveland probably has it too.
Detroit has not been good against rushing quarterbacks. Miami has been terrible. Again, I noted that in my column on numberFire for anyone.
No big deal, But also, Jacoby Brissett has a higher salary than Matthew Stafford and Aaron Rodgers. Just gonna throw that out there for some reason. Yeah, I think that it's probably a week we want to stay in the 8,000 range of quarterback. Based on what I'm seeing below 8,000, I think we're probably going to want to stay above.
Yeah, Kyler was decent, but not great.
Yeah, it was a repeat divisional matchup.
Yeah.
For the second time in like a couple weeks.
Oh,
he did run 8 times
for
the
60
Rams yards.
Again.
What?
They play the Rams again?
They haven't played the Rams yet this year, have they?
Yeah.
No, they haven't. Oh yeah, they played them week 3. Just kidding.
Sorry. haven't.
Yeah. I think that it's more so like Kyler, it's good to know for down the line. Maybe he's more viable now than he was before, but yeah. I think it's an 8,000 or higher week at quarterback. Let's go to your running back. Saquon gets the Titans. So is he going for 200 or 250? What do you
The
pick?
Texans.
Sorry, Texans. That's what I meant. My bad. 200 or 250. What do you pick?
225 rushing, another 75 receiving.
Okay, fair enough. Saquon is 95, his salary, and I get it.
Yeah. Derrick Henry 94 against the Broncos. Probably won't get there. Denver coming off a bye. They'll probably have some answers.
I can't get off Dalv at 75. Like, that's just such a good salary for his workload. I know the matchup stinks, but like, he's facing Buffalo. 75, like, for his workload is really, really good.
So a lot of this season has gone the way of the 7,000 running back tier.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and there's not a lot there this week. And I don't necessarily mean like there are names that are appealing, but there just aren't many guys there.
Yeah, physically, yeah.
Dameon Pierce is 77, Dalvin 75, Jamal Williams oversalaried at 74 for the both of us. Aaron Jones might not even play, 72. Tony Pollard, Jonathan Taylor, 7,000, same as Zeke and AJ Dillon. And those 4 names are all contingent on injuries.
Does seeing the lack of goodness in the 7,000 range increase your view of AJ Dillon at all, or no?
It does.
Yeah. I still don't feel great about it, but like, it is what it is. I think it increases my view of Jeff Wilson a bit too.
Yeah, David Montgomery against the Lions not drawing any attention is pretty telling, but
he's still playing about a 60% snap rate, but he's just not like.
Yeah, the role's not. It could be worse. I mean, his role, if you line up the snap rate and everything, might be somewhat similar to like Jeff Wilson.
Yeah, I think the problem is he needs like an 80% snap rate to be viable for DFS, where he's getting about 60%.
Yeah.
So I think Wilson at 65 is like probably pretty in play.
So what I'm really seeing is that running back is bad and very narrow.
Yeah.
There's like James Conner somewhat in consideration if we just want to take the snaps. Jeff Wilson is not perfect by any means. So maybe I need to prioritize building around like Saquon.
Yeah.
And not overlooking that. Because again,
I would also say monitor the guys at 7,000, because that's Dillon, that's Pollard, that's Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
Or maybe Deion Jackson at 55. I don't know. I don't know. That's a tough one for me. Wide receiver. What do you see in there?
Absolutely loaded.
Mm-hmm.
3 guys at 9,000 or higher with Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill. Justin Jefferson at 86, probably undersalaried. However, we don't have a lot of value at quarterback because we need the studs, primarily, and we're gonna have a hard time getting value at running back as well. So,
yeah,
that's tough.
The 6,000 range of receivers are not bad because you have Monroe St. Brown at 69. You have Christian Kirk at 68, Lazard 67. All those guys are at least viable. Gabe Davis, obviously, like he's not a cash game option. And like you can have bad weeks, but like I want guys who can mix in it. Like I want guys who can win me a week by themselves. And Davis is one of those guys, and getting that for 65 is nice. So if you're hand building or if you're putting an optimizer, you can put caps on exposures to certain players, put a cap on the exposure, but like I would still use him.
Yeah, I mean, he has that ability. He's done it once this year,
but he did it twice in a 1 month span last year too.
I'm saying he did it once this year. He's maxed out at 7 targets.
Oh no. Oh no. Cortland Sutton is 62.
Oh boy.
He's at 14, 23, and 13 yards past their games. I guess one of those was Brett Rippon. So not as bad, but geez.
Just want to jump back up before we go true value. Similar thing with the 7,000 range. We have 4 names with a 7 in front of their salary. So like
it's kind of setting up to force you into a stars and scrubs approach.
That actively changes the way that you can build lineups.
Yeah.
Also, one of those is Amari Cooper at 78, which...
What? 78?
Yeah, goodness. I'm surprised you just jumped right past it, but
I did because I have not considered him as much as I should have this year. Rondale Moore is 58. He's had double-digit targets a couple of times now recently. He had 10 this game. That was his first game with DeAndre Hopkins having 10. His ADOT is still low, but like he's at least getting targets. It's not the best role, but he's at least worth mentioning at 58 against the Rams.
Sure. I'll have interest in Michael Gallup at 57 once again.
I agree.
Maybe I need like the self-exclude on Gallup too.
I don't think he's in the MVS range as far as self-exclude yet, but he's flirting with it at least.
Allen Robinson salary adjustment from 7,000 to 5,700 after his 5-target 24-yard game.
Well, that's his 5th highest or 4th highest yardage output this year.
Wan'Dale Robinson 56. I don't know if his role is going to improve after the bye and without Kadarius Toney like completely on the team at all.
Oh man, Zay Jones at 55 is looking better and better and better.
Yeah.
Yikes. Zay Jones might wind up being a core play for me, which is frightening.
I'll say this. Due to the lack of confident plays in the 6,000 range at running back and like a pretty solid 6,000 range at receiver before a big drop off, it could be a flex or receiver kind of week.
Okay. Yeah. I don't disagree. Summary Torre of the Packers. If there's no Dobbs, he's had 4 targets in back-to-back games. Now could have one less guy involved there. 37 and 34 yards. Made a pretty nice play downfield on a deep throw from Rodgers in that game. I'm
Big
not
touchdown
like
last week too.
Yeah, I'm not like saying, "Oh yeah, pound the table for him," but I'm saying like look into his usage during this week is what I would say for Torre, and dig in and see like, okay, is there something we can buy into there and maybe consider him at $5,000.
I did not know Kevin White was still in the league.
I added him in a dynasty league this week because I had like 16,000 players on bye. So I only knew because of that. Okay, tight end. Kelsey is 85, and then it drops down to Taysom Hill at 65, which I think makes TJ Hawkinson at 6,000 pretty fun. Also, Greg Dulcich is back. He's 59, but I think that's an appropriate salary. Although it's weird with him at 59 and Sutton at 62.
It is.
Off-putting.
It sure is.
Oof. Yikes. Tight end is weird. Like the gradient on the salaries is odd. What are you seeing there? Anything else standing out to you?
I'm trying. It feels like it goes from obviously it could be a week where we try to prioritize Kelsey, which feels really hard to do.
Based on the landscape at receiver and running back, it might be impossible, honestly. And quarterback.
If I play Kelsey, it's going to be because I'm playing like 4 mid-tier receivers in like the 6 to low 7,000 range.
Yeah.
Because we don't have another one as at running back.
Yeah.
Like Foster Moro's role was not good. I guess maybe Cole Kmet. He scored 3 times the past 2 weeks, though.
He hadn't scored since 2020 before that.
Right.
He hasn't had more than 45 yards yet this year.
Yes, like that feels like a trap.
Yeah, it does. Dalton Schultz is at 55. Like he can't stay healthy, but he's had a bye now. He had 7 targets against the Bears for 74 yards. That could be not nothing. Also, Pat Freiermuth, we don't like that offense, but he's 56. Looking at him.
He's had 7 and 9 targets, 7-9, 2-9 the past 4 games for him. He's got some yardage upside.
He does.
No Claypool, I guess, too.
Sure.
I know that he's not been
that's true.
Super relevant, but
Pickens
was like 56.
Okay.
Yeah, 56.
I'd actually seeking that out, but it's not terrible. So we have some guys we'll have to dig into. I think that we're going to have to use some under salary guys in bad matchups like Dalv, because we'll probably need the salary savings this week in order to spend up at quarterback, in order to not dumpster dive in some other spots. I think we're going to have to use some guys in bad matchups this week just to get the savings relative to their production.
Do you think we'll get Tannehill back? Chig's 44.
I don't care.
Okay. I'm trying.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
I appreciate the effort, but no. Also, people work themselves into people work themselves into a tizzy about the Lions tight end situation this week, and then everyone except for Brock Reich had a touchdown. James Mitchell had one. Shane Zylstra had one. Just don't. You don't need to use the backup to the tight end. Just bump up Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's okay. Okay. A note to future me. After having broken down week number 9 and taking a look forward to week number 10, what are you noting for yourself?
That I still love DFS, even though this slate's going to be a bit of a headache. I got to remember that.
I think that it could be fun if we get good injury news. Like if Zeke decides to sit one more week, if we get JT back and good, or if we get no JT and Deion Jackson's a full practice all week, those could be okay. So there are routes to it being a good slate. We just have to see how things play out throughout the week.
I think for me, it's don't assume that flexing a running back is the best play this week.
I agree with that as well. Digging into all the receivers, digging into that, trying to identify guys. I would say that the note to future me is try to identify guys who have a Mixon within their range of outcomes. Who hasn't shown upside yet this year, but has the building blocks for within their set. I think that that's what I want to do is try to identify guys who have the building blocks for upside, but haven't shown it yet this year. Dalv, like I think that's what I want to do throughout this week is try to identify guys who can do that for us. And I think there are guys on next week's slate, and we'll see how their production winds up. That is all that we have here for our week 9 NFL recap, but we're back with you on Thursday once again to preview week number 10 breakdown, game stacks, priority plays, and much more. Get that live at 10 a.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube page, also up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed immediately after that. So go search for that, search for the FanDuel YouTube page, hit subscribe there, hit the like button as well. We appreciate those of you watching right now over on the FanDuel YouTube page as always, and also hit subscribe on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm on Twitter at Goodula13, GDULA13.
And I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your Monday night DFS lineups. We'll talk to you once again Thursday to preview week number 10. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.